Discover the amazing journey of a shivering maid and a billionaire in need of a mother's love. Sarah tightened her grip on the worn-out handle of her cleaning cart as she approached the opulent building. The structure loomed over her like a towering sentinel, its glistening windows reflecting a sun that seemed reluctant to shine. She took a deep breath, feeling the knot in her stomach tighten. What kind of world was this? One she'd never been a part of. A world so far removed from her humble, shadowed existence. Her mother needed medicine, her siblings required food, and here she was, a maid in a penthouse that glittered like gold yet felt so cold. Just the thought of stepping foot inside made her palms sweat. What awaited her in this labyrinth of privilege was a vast unknown. But as she wiped her clammy hands on her apron, she remembered the values her family had instilled in her. Diligence, integrity, dignity. They were her lifelines, tethering her to resolve amidst her worries. Thoughts raced through her mind. Could she do this well? Was she capable of cleaning away the dust of someone else's life? Each stride felt heavier, each step a reminder of the stakes. Failure could mean disaster. The door swung open with a mechanical ease. Jack stood there, an embodiment of wealth drenched in indifference. He skimmed over her with a glance that felt like a dismissal. "Right on time," he said, his voice flat, eyes cold. She nodded, a flame sparking indignation deep within her. This was supposed to be a temporary job, but standing before him, she felt like an interloper in his world. Would he ever see beyond her uniform? Would he care about the family dependencies that loomed over her day-to-day existence? She hesitated. "Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." As she moved through the penthouse, cleaning each room felt like scrubbing away layers of her own identity. The stark contrast of gold fixtures, sleek marble, and plush furnishings grated against her. Every surface she polished reminded her of her reality, each stroke embedded with resentment against a world that kept her family struggling. She clenched her teeth, forcing out thoughts of inadequacy. But the higher she climbed, the more her trepidation swelled. "You owe it to yourself to keep fighting." Her mother's words echoed in her mind, and she fought against the rising tide of despair. Then came the moment. Theirs was not just a crossing of paths, but a collision of seemingly disparate worlds, full of unspoken truths and shadows. Jack's taut expression shifted minutely, something unreadable flickering in his gaze when he saw her working with unyielding focus. It was the first crack in the facade of his cold exterior. For the first time, she questioned his indifference. Perhaps he carried a burden too. But her resolve shattered when a careless comment slipped from his lips about the importance of maintaining standards, a reminder of privilege that gnawed at her. Did he even understand what it meant to struggle? Could he comprehend the pain behind her diligent exterior? The feeling of being looked at as less than human made her chest tighten. She fought back tears, determining not to allow him to see any sign of weakness. After all, her family depended on her. Still, with every interaction, the tension mounted. How long could she remain steadfast in a world that made her feel like a ghost? Anxiety surged. Hope rammed against the walls of her heart. They stood at a precipice, each searching for something in the other. Her heart raced with uncertainty. Was there any way their worlds could intertwine? The echoes of their conflicting existences loomed larger, a storm on the horizon. Would she manage to navigate the tumultuous waters of their fragile connection, or would the riptides of their pasts pull them under? Sarah wiped her brow as she finished the last of her tasks for the day, her muscles aching from the labor, her mind clouded with thoughts of inadequacy and determination. Each room she had cleaned now felt like a stage on which she played her role as best she could, hoping to convey strength amidst the crippling weight of her financial reality. But with every finished task came the silent ache of longing for recognition, not just for her work, but for her as a person. Jack's remarks echoed painfully in her mind, each one a sharp reminder of the chasm between them. She hated how he could make her feel so diminished. The walls of his world pressed against her. She had to remind herself why she was here. Her family came first. They had to eat. They needed medicating. With job security clinging to the thread of her performance, she buried the anger boiling beneath her skin. Maybe one day she'd be able to turn it into something powerful. The routine of cleaning was not without its benefits. The more she performed her chores, the more adept she became at navigating the lavish space. She learned shortcuts to efficiency, observed the quirky decor choices that hinted at Jack's personality, and even discovered subtle hints of sadness woven into the fabric of the home. A photograph of a young Jack with a woman whose smile connected him to warmth, now replaced by unseen barriers. In those stolen moments, Sarah began to formulate a plan, not merely for her job, but for herself. She envisioned a future where her value wasn't predicated on the opinions of others. What could she do beyond cleaning? What skills lay dormant within her? Beneath the sheen of her uniform and her identity as a maid was a young woman pulsing with ambition. One evening, after another grueling day, she threw aside her mop and sank into the detail of an empty room. She closed her eyes and imagined herself approaching Jack with confidence, demanding recognition. The clarity of that vision stunned her. Was she ready to confront him? There had been fleeting connections, glimpses of understanding as he stared pensively out of those cold windows. But was she merely dreaming of something unattainable, something inherently beyond her reach? As the days turned to weeks, her confidence waxed. She started practicing her delivery in her quiet moments, piecing together articulate arguments for her worth. "You can't keep a good woman down," she murmured to herself. "I deserve to be seen." That mantra etched into her mind became her new lifeline. Eventually, an opportunity knocked. Jack requested her assistance with an important dinner. Guests of privilege and social importance were expected, and he needed someone to ensure flawless execution. It was a daunting proposition, but Sarah felt her heart lurch at the notion of taking on something bigger. This was a chance to show competence beyond cleaning. It could be the stepping stone toward self-actualization. Preparing her mind for that pivotal moment, Sarah mulled over what an accomplishment this could be. Who knew what a single conversation could ignite? She could either remain the humble maid in the shadows or step into the light, addressing not only Jack, but also her own uncertainty. As she prepared, pouring every ounce of dedication into the task ahead, the boundaries of her life began to blur. The line between maid and participant in Jack's world felt tenuous, and for the first time, Sarah found herself hungry for the struggle, the challenge. She recognized that this stage was not merely an opportunity, it was an arena where she could invent herself anew. But would her resolve withstand the pressure of expectation? How would Jack respond? And in this orchestra of affluent individuals, would she find her voice? Or would she retreat into silence once more? In that whirlwind of uncertainty and exhilaration, Sarah stood at the precipice of her new reality, ready to leap into the unknown. Little did she know that the outcome of that dinner would change everything, not only for her aspirations, but also in the connection between her and Jack that had been simmering beneath the surface. As the night approached, the weight of destiny pressed heavily upon her. Would she claim her place at the table, or would fear send her retreating into the dark corners of invisibility once again? The tension thickened as she prepared to face both personal demons and perhaps a surprising revelation. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows in the elegant dining room, Sarah felt the gravity of the evening settle upon her shoulders. The clinking of fine china and the low murmur of voices from the kitchen heightened her anticipation. This was not just another night. It was her moment, an intersection of her dreams and a daunting test of her resolve. She carefully arranged the silverware, glancing sporadically at Jack as he directed the social flow with practiced ease. Each point he made drew laughter and admiration, while she faded into the background, struggling between her desire to remain unseen and the urge to step forward and be part of this world. She fought against the familiar surge of self-doubt, threatening to drown her ambitions. If this dinner went well, perhaps it could break the cycle that had confined her for so long. "Remember your worth, Sarah," she reminded herself as she placed the final piece of cutlery into position. Each motion was intentional, reflective of the preparation she had been undertaking for weeks. It was more than just physical work. It was the manifestation of her potential unfolding in front of her very eyes. Suddenly, she caught Jack's gaze. He regarded her with an intensity that sent a shiver down her spine, a mixture of acknowledgement and confusion that sent her heart racing. As the guests arrived, lavish outfits swirling through the foyer, Sarah switched into overdrive. She refilled glasses of wine, ensured hors d'oeuvres were plentiful, and maintained a serene smile, all while internal thoughts battled fiercely for dominance. Here she was, lost in a world of glamour, while her own life played a dissonant tune of struggles. But something new began to ignite within her, a spark of strength that whispered she belonged here, if only she could prove it. Later on, in a quiet moment after the main course, Jack approached her, inviting her to the side while guests mingled. The moment felt weighty, a revelation shimmering just beneath the surface. "Sarah," he began, his voice dropping to a more personal tone. "Thank you for your hard work tonight. I couldn't have done it without you." The compliment struck her with unexpected force, flooding her mind with visions not just of servitude, but of partnership, teamwork, qualities that she had always yearned for. "Thank you, Jack," she replied, steadying her breath, courage beginning to form in her chest. "I hope to bring more to the table than just cleaning." He paused, brow furrowing, as a hint of surprise crossed his face. "What do you mean?" This was her moment. She felt her pulse quickening, the mantra of self-worth whispering louder than ever. Here was her chance to carve a path not defined by others. "I mean," she articulated, choosing her words carefully, "that I want to contribute in ways that go beyond my duties. I see potential in myself that I'd like to explore." His surprised expression shifted to one of intrigue, and she pressed on, ignoring the self-doubt rising again. "I want to learn from you, to be a part of this world, not just as a maid, but as someone who can bring value, whether it's assisting you with events or understanding the business side of things. I have skills." Jack studied her for a moment, the silence thick and alive between them. "You mean, you'd like a more active role?" "Yes," she breathed, feeling a rush of exhilaration mixed with fear. The intersection of her identity as a hard-working employee and her desire for recognition felt dangerously close to colliding. Before he could respond, their moment was interrupted by the arrival of an important guest, but the connection had been established. She sensed a shift had occurred, though its full implications remained uncertain. Would he support her burgeoning ambition, or dismiss her aspirations as merely the musings of a maid? As the evening progressed and the laughter of affluent guests filled the air, Sarah found herself oscillating between exhilaration and anxiety. She had crossed a threshold, declaring her latent ambitions to Jack. But what would he do with this new awareness? Standing in the luxurious dining room, she realized this was no longer simply about her job. It was about redefining her existence within the constraints of someone else's world. The taste of empowerment lingered in her spirit, but just as quickly, shadows loomed large with the impending challenge. Would Jack see her as a potential ally, or merely a reminder of his own privilege? As the night continued, Sarah prepared herself for both the possibilities of rejection and affirmation. The delicate balance of her future now teetered on the edge of a decision that could either tether her to her past or launch her towards the future, forever altering the dynamics of her relationship with Jack. In the midst of clinking glasses, laughter, and the promise of change, one question formed in her mind. Would she risk everything and step fully into her own light? Or would she retreat back to the safety of the shadows? The stakes had never felt higher. As the evening dwindled into an exhilarating blur of laughter and clinking glasses, Sarah found herself retreating to the corner of the room, a small sanctuary amidst the chaos of social exuberance. In this self-imposed exile, her thoughts swirled, intimately dissecting the moment with Jack. Her heart raced at the mere thought of their interaction, alive with possibilities but weighed down by uncertainty. She dared to imagine herself navigating through this realm of opulence and charisma with newfound confidence. Yet, the specter of self-doubt loomed large, whispering insidious fears. What if Jack had only reacted kindly out of courtesy? What if he felt obliged to acknowledge her aspirations, but truly viewed her as merely a maid? The duality of her identity pressed heavily on her, nearly suffocating in that very moment. The chatter intensified as guests began discussing business collaborations, and she could hear Jack's voice rising above the din, confident and precise. Each word resonated like a mantra, a reflection of everything she yearned to be. She gripped the edge of the table, her knuckles whitening as she questioned whether she had the mettle to step forward again. The urge to flee back to the safety of her quiet existence thrummed beneath her skin like a pulsating current. The evening lingered on, but the invitation had been extended. Jack would soon return to their conversation, and she had to be prepared. Prepared to express herself with clarity and purpose, to refuse the inertia that had plagued her for too long. This was her moment of transformation, and her desires for growth had begun to feel like an almost tangible creature, clawing its way to the surface. She willed herself to remember her skills, not just in the realm of service, but in the very essence of communication and organization that had simmered beneath her exterior for years. The event had already shown her that she was capable. Perhaps if she spoke to Jack again, she could weave her aspirations into a tapestry that would elevate her position. The din of laughter and conversation began to fade into a haze of possibilities. Sarah inhaled deeply, her breath catching on the remnants of anticipation that lingered in her heart. The resounding steel of resolve reinforced her purpose. Their connection had not been a fluke. It had opened a door, and she was poised to knock again. As guests began to trickle out, she seized the opportune moment when Jack again made his way toward her, waving off the lingering chatter of the night's festivities. The weight of anticipation battered her heart like a storm-worn lighthouse, and she steadied herself against the table, gathering the fragments of her courage. "Jack, about what we discussed earlier," she began, her voice steadier than she felt. "I hope I didn't overstep. It's just that I see potential for how I can contribute here, in a more meaningful way." Each word resonated with a clarity she had not expected, a stark contrast to the inner doubts swirling in her mind. Jack's brow furrowed, curiosity sparking once more. "I appreciate your ambition, Sarah, but how do you see that working? What exactly do you want to do?" His tone was earnest, demanding a reply. It grounded her. He was not pushing her aside, but inviting her to fortify her emerging identity. The event planning aspect, she gestured toward the remnants of the evening, imperfect yet vibrant. "I believe I can help coordinate such affairs. I have had experience in organizing smaller events in the past. I'm organized, and I'm eager to learn the bigger picture from you." A flicker of something inscrutable crossed Jack's face. Skepticism? Intrigue? Sarah's heart raced as she awaited his reply, the tension thickening the air around them. What would he say? Would he scoff at her dreams, or see a glimmer of potential? In that pregnant pause, Sarah understood that her future hinged on this exchange, each second stretching infinitely, poised between the safety of her past and the alluring yet terrifying promise of a different life. Then, just as the silence felt unendurable, she saw his lips curl slightly in contemplation. "Let's talk more about this," he finally said, his voice steady yet tempered with a hint of trepidation. But I want us to think practically. This might require more from you than you realize. The words filled her with a cocktail of hope and uncertainty, prickling her determination with an exhilarating rush. As she nodded, the rest of the evening dimmed into the background haze. A new reality was beginning to unfold, and the taste of ambition was sweeter than ever. But lurking beneath the surface was another unsettling question. What lies in store when the practicalities of her desires clash with the harshest truths of their class divide? She could feel the weight of that impending confrontation, and she knew that she would have to face it sooner rather than later. The days following her encounter with Jack were a blur of introspection and preparation for Sarah. The conversation replayed incessantly in her mind, each word a small spark igniting a fire within her. Yet, behind that burgeoning ambition lurked the muted echoes of doubt. How could she bridge the cavernous gap between their worlds? Was she truly ready to forge ahead into the realm of event planning? Or was she destined to be relegated to the shadows of service? Sarah's nights were plagued with thoughts of timelines and tasks, strategic plans to gain experience, and ways to impress Jack with her passion. She would peruse the internet late into the night, building a mental toolbox of ideas drawn from industry blogs, professional networks, and online courses. She convinced herself that this would merely be the first step, a way to alleviate her fears, to acquire the skills that would validate her aspirations in Jack's eyes. During the days, she remained diligent at her job, but her perception had shifted. Instead of a mere maid, she positioned herself as an aspiring professional behind the scenes. The events she helped organize now appeared as stepping stones, rather than isolated incidents, each one a lesson in management, coordination, and human interaction. She started to see mundane tasks through a different lens, questioning how they could align with her professional goals. The doubts, however, were persistent, whispering about her status, her upbringing, and the inherent barriers they formed. Each time she stood in front of an event's tapestry, contemplating its intricacies, she could feel that bifurcation in her being, a maid by title but a planner by ambition. That dissonance brewed inside her, igniting a fragile determination tempered by trepidation. Encouraged by her growing knowledge, Sarah finally took the plunge and reached out to Jack again. It was a calculated decision, to request a meeting under the pretense of familiarizing herself with the basics of event planning. Just a conversation, she told herself, nothing monumental. But the truth was undeniable. She craved his validation, hungered for his acknowledgement of her potential. When the day arrived, she donned one of her best outfits, a simple dress that felt sophisticated yet achievable. It represented the merging of her maid's identity with her aspirations for something more. As she walked toward the venue where they agreed to meet, her heart raced, fueled with hope, yet tethered by remnants of anxiety. Jack appeared just as charming as she remembered, a charismatic beacon amid the subdued lighting of the cafe. They exchanged pleasantries, but there was an unmistakable undercurrent of tension in the air. An anticipatory charge, each moment steeped in unspoken possibilities. "So, Sarah," he began, amusement barely visible in his expression. "What have you been up to in terms of preparing for the big leagues?" His expectations were clear. This was a trial for her, an opportunity to substantiate her ambitions. Swallowing hard, Sarah seized the moment. "I've been researching event planning and gathering resources," she began, her confidence stabilizing with each syllable that spilled forth. "I've even explored ideas on managing logistics and budgets, which I think could improve future events significantly." Jack leaned back, his brow furrowing with interest, but the studying glimmer in his eyes sent a wave of anxiety through her. Did he believe in her ideas, or was he merely being polite? "What I don't want to overlook in this conversation," he interjected, seriousness weaving into his tone, "is the requirement for authentic experience. You can't theorize preparation. It's about real-world challenges and learning to adapt." His words echoed like a hammer on an anvil, firm and unyielding, forcing her to confront the sobering reality of what lay ahead. The implications of Jack's statement began to unfurl within her, as exhilarating as they were daunting. She wasn't merely stating aspirations. She was embarking on a transformative venture that would unveil her resilience, her adaptability in the face of reality. As the conversation flowed deeper, Sarah felt herself questioning more than just her readiness. She now sensed the vast expectations placed upon her, ones she needed to prove true to herself as much as to him. "Are you sure you want this?" Jack asked suddenly, catching her off guard. His voice was steady, yet uncertainty still danced in his expression. His inquiry resonated deeper than any surface-level assessment. The moment hung between them, brimming with gravity. With her future shimmering in the incandescent light of that cafe, Sarah was struck by the essence of her journey. Her choice was not just about a single career. It was the embodiment of her identity rebirthing into something she was still learning to define. "More than anything," she replied, her voice unwavering. "All I need is a chance, and the willingness to learn." Jack's gaze lingered on her, and for an instant, she thought he saw the flicker of potential within her. But what did a chance truly entail? The question reverberated in her mind long after their meeting ended. With Jack's cryptic challenge and the looming specter of reality hanging overhead, Sarah understood that she would have to confront the arduous path ahead, one filled with not just professional hurdles, but the personal truths of who she was becoming. What lay on the horizon as she sought to prove herself, to forge her own identity within the world that had previously relegated her to the shadows. As those thoughts culminated, a tremor of resolve ignited within her. The moment of decision had arrived. Unbeknownst to her, each step into that unfamiliar terrain would summon not only her resilience, but also unavoidable truths about her past and the future she dared to claim. The days following her meeting with Jack solidified one undeniable truth for Sarah. The time for talking was over. It was clear she needed tangible experience and direct engagement in the event planning world, not just abstract knowledge acquired through research. A newfound fire blazed within her, one that demanded action rather than thought. Motivated by this conviction, Sarah scoured her environment for opportunities. She began to scope out local businesses and organizations that hosted events, eager to immerse herself in actionable learning. The meticulous planning she had fantasized about needed to be manifested in concrete experiences. She committed to volunteering for any chance to shadow seasoned professionals, even if it meant starting from the very ground level once more. Under the guise of preparation, Sarah's ambition quickly overshadowed the fear that had plagued her. Each time she faced uncertainty, she reminded herself of Jack's words. It was essential to encounter authentic challenges. She forced herself to abandon her comfort zone, to become outspoken among colleagues, expressing her desire to take on more responsibility whenever the opportunity arose. During one particularly busy weekend at the hotel, an opportunity presented itself. A large gala was scheduled for that evening, and the usual team was stretched thin. Several key staff members had called in sick, and a palpable tension filled the air as the remaining team scrambled to ensure everything remained on track. This was her moment. Without hesitation, Sarah approached her supervisor and offered to assist in organizing the last-minute logistics. She could feel her heart racing as the words exited her mouth, propelled by a mix of adrenaline and determination. Sarah's supervisor looked her over, doubt flickering momentarily in her eyes before she relented. "All right, Sarah. You can take lead on the registration table, but you'll need to coordinate everything, so no slacking. We can't afford any mistakes." "Absolutely," Sarah replied. Excitement coursed through her as she hurried off, fully embracing the weight of responsibility that had just been thrust upon her. In the chaos that ensued, Sarah's resolve was tested time and again. Guests flowed into the venue, their expectations soaring. She moved seamlessly, checking names against her list, managing ticket discrepancies, and liaising with the catering staff on last-minute changes. Each decision she made boosted her confidence further. The moments of doubt that once resided in her mind retreated, muffled by her action. Yet, amid the stirring triumph, Sarah discovered the subtle intricacies of real-world challenges. Technical glitches appeared, and tensions with the service staff flared. There was a moment where a VIP guest was left waiting, glaring at her in frustration. Confronted with that icy stare, her resolve threatened to crack, but instead, she leaned into Jack's earlier lesson. Adaptability was key. In that split second, a choice emerged, not to succumb to fear, but to tackle the issue directly. "Please forgive the delay. We're getting you sorted right away," she encouraged, her voice steady as she coordinated with an associate to solve the issue. The tightness in her chest eased slightly as she recognized her own ability to influence the chaos around her. By the time the event drew to a close, a sense of profound accomplishment enveloped Sarah. The night had been far from perfect. Mistakes were made, yet she navigated through them, a testament to her rapid growth. As guests reveled and the last remnants of the gala were dismantled, she felt the weight of her ambitions solidify like the roots of a tree taking hold in fertile soil. After the event, Jack's face emerged in her thoughts, reminding her of the validation she craved. But tonight, it was different. She didn't solely seek his approval. She had begun to appreciate her own worth. The barrier she'd felt so acutely just days prior seemed to fragment as she acknowledged that she was the architect of her own path, capable of transforming potential into progress. Yet beneath the surface of her newfound success, shadows of doubt still flickered. Would her recent experiences suffice for her ambitions? Was Jack truly the right person to validate her journey? Did she still require external recognition, or could she stand independently? As she returned home, the thrill of accomplishment mingled with a gnawing uncertainty. She stood at the precipice of something greater, balancing on the edge of self-discovery while wrestling with the question: how far had she truly come, and would it be enough to bridge the gap she felt existed between them? The journey was burgeoning within her. Yet, it was only the beginning. What challenges lurked ahead, ready to test the woman she was becoming? With these thoughts swirling, Sarah closed her eyes, feeling the weight of the next steps press against her heart. She couldn't shake the feeling that her meeting with Jack was just around the corner again, and the stakes would be higher than ever. As dawn broke over the city, Sarah felt the weight of the previous night lingering like a bittersweet aftertaste. The echoes of laughter and clinking glasses had faded, but they left behind a vivid imprint of her recent triumph. Yet now, alone in her room, reflection nudged away the exhilaration, surfacing the question that haunted her thoughts. Who was she becoming, and who did she want to be? Determined to harness the momentum she had gained, Sarah opened her laptop and began to research upcoming events in the area. She jotted down names, dates, and venues, her fingers dancing across the keyboard, fueled by a blend of curiosity and ambition. Networking became her next challenge, and she resolved to reach out to local planners and organizations. It was time to step beyond the confines of her current role and expand her professional circle. As she drafted a few introductory emails, anxiety pricked at her. Each dear name felt like a leap of faith. She hesitated before hitting send, her self-doubt creeping in. But her resolve crystallized as she recalled the exhilaration of the gala night. Dynamic change demanded bold moves, she chided herself, and her finger finally pressed the button. The days that followed were both exhilarating and intimidating. Responses trickled in, some warm, others polite, but tepid. Sarah immersed herself in her research further, attending workshops and local meetups, hoping to nurture new connections while building her skills. Each event she attended became a battleground for her confidence, a gauntlet of conversations that stretched her limits and tested her ability to engage. During one networking event, Sarah was introduced to Helen, a senior event planner known for her meticulous attention to detail. As they spoke, Sarah's heart raced with excitement. Helen possessed a wealth of experience, and within their conversation, Sarah discovered a potent mix of admiration and envy within herself. Helen was exactly the professional Sarah aspired to be, graceful in her knowledge, commanding in her presence. "Is it just me? Or do you feel an insatiable drive for more?" Helen asked, a faint smile gracing her lips. The question struck a chord, prompting Sarah to open up about her aspirations. "I sometimes worry that my inexperience will hold me back," Sarah admitted, giving voice to the nagging fear that had clung to her since she had ventured into this world. "Am I really meant to do this?" Helen's thoughtful gaze met Sarah's. "You have to embrace the uncertainty. It keeps you sharp and encourages you to grow. You wouldn't want success to come too easily. What would you learn from it?" The words resonated within her. They unlocked a realization. Her journey could not be defined solely by recognition from others, especially Jack. It had to be rooted in her own pursuit of excellence, even if it meant grappling with risk and self-doubt. As she walked home that evening, Sarah replayed their conversation in her mind, savoring Helen's wisdom. Her path lay within the strife, but something deeper tugged at her thoughts. Jack's looming presence. The notion of him as a validation figure still whispered in her subconscious, intertwining with her ambitions. And yet, as she approached the threshold of her apartment, a plan began to form. One shaped by her experiences and desires, a plan that cast Jack not as a figure of approval, but as a necessary challenge to her self-assuredness. Determined to forge her identity, Sarah realized she needed to confront Jack head-on. The discomfort fueled her growth, and likely, her next meeting with him could integrate all her newfound insights. What if she presented her experiences authentically? What if she could engage him in a way that dismantled the pedestal she had placed him on? The reverberations of her internal change electrified her senses. As she settled in for the night, her thoughts swirled with anticipation. The next chapter of her journey was ready to unfold, full of potential, uncertainty, and the delicate dance of self-discovery. But one question lingered above the rest. Would she embrace her burgeoning voice when faced with him again? The answer might dictate whether she truly stepped into her own light. The sun dipped low in the sky as Sarah prepared for her meeting with Jack, the familiar flutter of anxiety tightening her chest. The prospect of sitting across from him again sent waves of doubt crashing through her mind. Could she face him not as someone seeking validation, but as an equal? Drawing in a steadying breath, she focused her thoughts on the conversation with Helen. It was time to advance rather than retreat. Arriving at the bustling cafe where they had agreed to meet, she took a moment to absorb the surroundings. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee mingled with the chatter of patrons. This was her battlefield today, an opportunity to wield her voice amidst the noise. She spied Jack at a corner table, his eyes fixed on his phone. There he sat, seemingly oblivious to the growing distance between his perception of her and the woman she aspired to become. Her heart raced, but she reminded herself of Helen's words. With each step toward him, she committed to embracing her uncertainty. No longer would she allow her self-doubt to cloud her presence. "Hey, Jack," she said with a casual tone, infusing confidence into the greeting. He looked up, surprised but quickly masking it with a smile. "Sarah, good to see you." His warm veneer was inviting but felt discontinuous with her newfound resolve. As they exchanged pleasantries, she found it easy to slip into the rhythm of their conversation, discussing recent events and mutual acquaintances. But with each passing moment, a steady pulse of fear lingered beneath her composure. How long would it be before she had to confront the elephant in the room, her ambitions and the weight of his influence over her journey? "Have you been working on any exciting projects?" Jack queried, tilting his head slightly as he glanced at her with interest. This was her moment. Sarah swallowed, feeling the truth bubble up within her. "Actually, yes. I've been branching out, attending workshops, and meeting local event planners. I'm really trying to push myself into new territories." She expected him to offer a polite response or an encouraging nod, but instead, he seemed to lean into the conversation. "That's great. I knew you had it in you. How are you feeling about stepping up?" She hesitated, but Jack's encouragement sparked an assertiveness that took her by surprise. "I feel good about it. I mean, there's this part of me that's always wondered if I'm enough. But lately I've realized that it's not just about proving myself to others. I need to own my own success. I'm done waiting for external validation. Jack's expression shifted, his brow furrowing slightly. That sounds different from what you've told me before. It's good to hear you feel that way, but it's also a bit concerning. His cautious reaction shifted the scenery from a pleasant cafe to a daunting arena. Why is that concerning? She asked, her voice steadier than the tremor in her stomach. Jack placed his hands on the table, collecting his thoughts visibly. I've seen people lose themselves when they chase external validation. It's good to want more, but just remember to balance those ambitions with what you truly want. His words hung between them like a dense fog. Sarah could feel the remnants of their previous dynamic reasserting themselves, where he had always been the anchor, the steady presence. But she wasn't the same woman who had walked into this cafe. She wouldn't allow his caution to undermine her momentum. I appreciate your concern, she said, adopting a tone of sincerity. But I'm not seeking it from you anymore. I'm offering myself that validation, Jack, and that's a vital shift for me. The silence that followed felt like a thunderclap, the subtle but significant change in their dynamic crackling in the air. Sarah couldn't determine if Jack felt admirable respect or incredulous surprise, but she knew power had shifted. She was reclaiming the narrative of her life as they both navigated this newfound tension. Would this confrontation ultimately illuminate the path to true self-assertion, or would it reveal deeper fractures between them? As she watched Jack's contemplative expression, that question lingered heavily, the stakes clearer now than ever before. Confronting him had unveiled a dimension of strength she hadn't fully recognized. Yet within that empowerment, another layer of uncertainty loomed. What came next? And how would their relationship evolve in light of this revelation? The tension wrapped around them like a tightrope as Sarah observed Jack. His contemplative silence was heavier than any words he might have expressed. She could almost feel the weight of his thoughts pressing down on her. And for a moment, she considered retreating behind her familiar shield of self-doubt. Yet, the impulse to flee was overwhelmed by something transformative, a surge of determination coursing through her veins. Sometimes it takes losing sight of myself to find what I truly want, she added, fighting the urge to backpedal. Every cell in her body seemed to rally around her newfound conviction. I've been blinded by expectations for far too long. Jack finally broke the silence, his eyes searching hers. It's admirable to want to take control, really. Just make sure you don't hurt yourself in the process. His tone was cautious, protective even, but Sarah bristled against it. Why should she be the one adjusting her ambitions? Why shouldn't he recognize the strength burgeoning within her? Jack, it's my journey, not yours, she replied, holding his gaze. The soft timbre of her voice conveyed both vulnerability and strength. I want to explore what I can achieve outside the confines of what everyone expects from me, including you. His brow deepened, and a flicker of defensiveness ignited in his expression. But Sarah, I'm not trying to hold you back. I just care about your well-being. That's what makes this so difficult, she said, her heart racing. I don't want your concern to be a tether. I need to determine who I am on my own terms. The notion reverberated within her, gaining strength with every syllable. The old Sarah, the one who courted approval, was slipping away, and it felt both exhilarating and terrifying. At that moment, Sarah recognized something crucial. Her success would not be defined by Jack or anyone else. It would be a reflection of her own choices, daring and authentic. The realization washed over her, prompting an internal celebration that pushed aside the apprehension. Do you remember the project we worked on together? She continued, brazen enough to navigate the conversation. At the time, I let your vision lead. I respected our partnership, but I carried your standards like a weight on my shoulders. I'm ready to redefine my limits. Jack leaned back, arms crossed, his expression inscrutable. Could he comprehend that Sarah was struggling not only to rise, but also to craft something uniquely hers? Perhaps he didn't fully understand the depth of her transformation. She knew this was vital, not just for their relationship, but for her personal evolution. In silence, she watched him. The light that filled the cafe was playful, casting shadows on their conversation. She sensed an unfamiliar dynamic developing. Curiosity intermingled with the threads of tension between them. Would he respect her need for autonomy, or would this shift bring conflict? "Sarah, he started before halting abruptly. His hesitance tugged at her, almost like an invitation to step further into this conversation. Maybe he was grappling with his own reservations about who they were becoming, both as individuals and collaborators. "We can still work together, you know," she offered, lightening her tone in a bid to diffuse the encroaching awkwardness. "But on my terms. I think we could create something exceptional if we both recognized our respective strengths." As the words settled, Sarah felt a flicker of hope. She was no longer trapped in the shadows of his expectations. She was asserting her direction, taking steps toward personal and professional independence. But could Jack adapt? Would he step back and genuinely support her resolve? The unanswered questions loomed heavy in the air like an unsolved puzzle. The transformation was just beginning, and she knew the path ahead would demand fortitude. Confronting Jack had taken her courage, yet the clarity of her purpose felt compelling. Before she could dwell too long on these thoughts, she caught a glimpse of something shifting in his eyes. It ignited anticipation within her, a harbinger of potential revelations. Pushing through the fragile moment, she knew the next confrontation loomed, perhaps not only with Jack but also within herself. "Are you ready to see me for who I am becoming?" she asked quietly, bracing for his response, a mixture of excitement and apprehension coursing through her. Would Jack embrace this new chapter with her, or would he cling to the past? In that electrifying silence, she held her breath, the next hurdle ahead steep with uncertainty. The air in the cafe crackled with tension, thickening around them as Sarah awaited Jack's response to her bold declaration. Silence stretched, and then finally broke, his voice steady yet contemplative. "I want to understand, Sarah. You've grown in ways I didn't anticipate." He leaned forward, an inkling of intrigue sparking in his expression. "But let's discuss how I can support you without imposing my own expectations." With those words, a flicker of hope ignited inside her. This was not just a conversation about ambitions. It was an opportunity to lay the foundation for mutual respect. "I appreciate that, Jack. It's about collaboration, and I want us to create a partnership built on transparency," she asserted, a newfound clarity alighting her resolve. Their discussion ventured into the specifics of her aspirations in event planning, each word interlaced with ambition and vision. "I have ideas for enhancing client engagement, incorporating innovative themes, and creating unique experiences that tell a story." Each concept painted a vivid tableau of what she envisioned, garnering Jack's attentiveness as he absorbed her enthusiasm. As they exchanged ideas, she found him leaning in. This was no longer about her position as a maid. It was about her identity blossoming into a professional. In those exchanges, she felt a symbiotic energy, each idea they shared igniting the flame of possibility. However, recognizing the gravity of their roles was also essential. Jack's perspective formed the backdrop against which she could heighten her competence. She leaned into that realization, merging her knowledge with his experience, forging a path that acknowledged both their strengths. It feels empowering, yet beneath the joy of articulation, a subtle concern persisted within her mind. Could she maintain this momentum without reverting to the shadows of their previous dynamic? It was a battle internalized, a reminder of the discomfort that lingered. If their connection started to waver with her newfound autonomy, would it disrupt the potential for growth? The discussion drifted toward logistics, cost projections, and timelines. Sarah felt empowered discussing these details, previously shrouded in doubt. Jack listened attentively, offering insights that challenged her, yet she met him at every turn with confidence. Each collaborative exchange fortified the blossoming respect between them. Eventually, the conversation circled back to their relationship as collaborators. "I want to be clear, Sarah. I'm not trying to create obstacles. I see potential in you, but I won't lower my standards. My willingness to support you isn't about conditions. It's a commitment to excellence." "That's fair, Jack," she replied, her voice steady. "And our expectations should align. I don't need to be seen as just a maid. I want the chance to prove my worth based on performance." His eyes sparkled with renewed respect. "I can work with that," he stated with finality. The warmth of his acceptance felt liberating, allowing Sarah the space to breathe under scrutiny she once found so daunting. As the sun dipped low, shadowing the cafe in a golden hue, she sensed change wrapping around them like a new cloak. They were both redefining their roles, not solely influencer and influenced, but co-creators, acknowledging growth synchronously. By evening's end, their conversation brimmed with trust, ambition, and mutual promises to uphold their individual visions. The prospect of working together had morphed. It was now distinctly collaborative. Walking away from the cafe, Sarah reflected on her own evolution, from a timid maid obscured beneath Jack's shadow to a burgeoning professional carving her own niche. The hurdles facing her were no longer just about overcoming societal labels. They were about embracing an identity fully validated. She could feel the weight of personal achievement settle over her shoulders. She had faced Jack, articulated her desires, and demanded recognition on her terms, not as a plea, but as a declaration of independence. That night, as she settled into her thoughts, a clear sense of fulfillment enveloped her. Jack's presence no longer posed a challenge to her self-worth. Instead, they were now allies engaging in a dance of growth. What lay ahead was filled with uncertainty, but Sarah stood grounded in her self-assertion, knowing she was ready to navigate whatever obstacles emerged. This lesson marked a turning point. She felt anchored by her achievements, fully aware that she had not only shaped her career, but had also forged a new identity unshackled from the past. In a world once dominated by struggles, she now grasped the reins of success and saw that her journey had just begun. Trusting herself became her new mantra. Tomorrow would bring fresh challenges, yet with each step, Sarah felt the urge for independence swell within her. She was no longer a ship adrift. She was steering her own course, determined to chart a future defined by ambition and authenticity. You need to subscribe now to this channel. This is the moment to show your support for heartfelt personal journeys like Sarah's. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm so we can continue creating content that inspires. Comment your thoughts, reactions, and theories about Sarah's transformational ending below. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness this incredible conclusion. Your support matters.